We live in a world that feels more polarized than ever. Politics, religion, economics, social issues. It feels like there's constant disagreement wherever you look, especially online. Debates, arguments, entire channels dedicated for people to clash with each other. But recently I've been wondering, do we actually disagree as much as it seems? Because if you zoom out far enough, a lot of people seem to want similar things. They want people to be safe. They want opportunities to exist. They want societies to function. They want less suffering and more flourishing. So if that's true, why does it feel like we disagree on almost everything? And I think a really important distinction shows up here. The difference between ends and means. So what do I mean by that? Well, by ends, I mean the goal, what we're actually trying to achieve. Things like reducing suffering, improving lives, creating a better future. And by means, I mean how we get there. The systems we use, the policies we support, the institutions we build, and ultimately the decisions we make. And I think most disagreement lives here, not in the destination, but in the route. Because two people can both genuinely care about the same outcome, but completely disagree on how to actually achieve it, or what might unintentionally make things worse. For example, one person might believe that a certain policy reduces harm and protects people, while another believes it creates long-term damage and unintended consequences. And this isn't necessarily anyone acting in bad faith. It often comes down to people having different information, different experiences, different assumptions about how the world works. Or sometimes people just weight things differently. And this goes back to what I talked about in my second video. One person might prioritize equality, while another person prioritizes freedom. Both may care about improving lives overall, but when those values conflict, they choose differently. Or they might think in different time horizons. One person is focused on improving things today, while another focuses on protecting the future. And both can genuinely believe that they are doing the right thing. Now, of course, it's not always that simple. And I don't want to suggest that every disagreement is just a misunderstanding about the means, because that's not true. There are over 8 billion people in this world. And some people genuinely do have different fundamental values, different ideas about what matters, different ideas about who even counts, and what good even means. But I still think a large amount of disagreement happens within that overlapping space where people broadly share similar goals. Because what happens is we jump straight into disagreeing about solutions before we've even established on what we're trying to achieve. And that's where things get messy. Because if two people are trying to get to completely different destinations, then of course the routes won't match. But if they are trying to reach the same place, then disagreement becomes something more precise. Not who is right, but what is actually the best way to get us there. And that shift matters, because it turns conflict into something closer to problem solving. Now, one final thing I want to say is this. The means absolutely matter. Understanding the direction we want to move is so important. But that doesn't mean every path gets us there. Good intentions don't automatically produce good outcomes. Someone can genuinely want to reduce suffering, but still choose a method that increases it in practice, which is why it's so important to keep checking. Are our actions actually moving us towards what we say we care about? So yeah, that's just something I've been thinking about, and I wanted to talk about it before I started sharing my specific opinions on certain topics. Not because I think I have it all figured out, but because I think having a clearer end makes it much easier to evaluate the means. It gives us something to return to, and it helps us question whether our solutions actually match our goals. And just to be clear, I'm not trying to give a lecture about how people should debate or argue. I'm not an expert in communication, and people can obviously speak and debate however they want. This is just an observation, that sometimes we spend huge amounts of time and energy arguing over solutions when the real disagreement might be about something more basic. And if we can figure out whether we're disagreeing about the destination or the route, we might be able to spend more time moving towards the things we actually care about. Anyway, that's it for this one. Hopefully you found it interesting, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.